Thank you, everyone, for joining us here today. I'm Mike Dravenstadt. I'm chair of the board of the D&L National Heritage Corridor, and we're pleased to have the opportunity to talk to everyone today about our collective efforts to close the gap in the D&L Trail between the Black Diamond Trailhead all the way into Wilkes-Barre. And this is one of two gaps that we're intently focused on, the other being a 7-mile gap in the Lehigh Valley north of Allentown. And the way we look at it, both these gaps are really similar in three ways. First, they will serve to connect vital city cores, Wilkes-Barre and Allentown, and many underadvantaged neighborhoods and populations to the wealth of benefits that trails provide. Those are some of the benefits that we have as part of our mission: connection to industrial heritage, access to health and wellness, and the trail being part of that healthcare infrastructure. Certainly nature and the environment and the beauty, as you can see in that picture there, and certainly economic development. Secondly, closing the gaps will multiply our investments to date in the D&L Trail many times over. When we give people more destinations and more connections, more people will use the trail and increase the value that already exists. So making these connections, these final connections through the gaps, makes everything we've done even more valuable. And finally, I think the big similarity is these aren't easy. In both areas, connecting through the gaps will require several projects on each of several sections with a variety of funding sources. And I've come to realize that the financial engineering of this is as challenging as the surveying and the trail building. But I think the most important thing to remember is that we can't do it without partners and partnership. And that's public, private, not-for-profit, and individuals. And that we all need to work together for a common purpose, which is to expedite the connection of the D&L Trail for the tens of thousands of people who are waiting for it to happen and who are going to benefit when it does happen. And to me, it's that collective vision and determination that will allow us to have our voices heard in town halls, in municipalities, in county chambers, and the Capitol down in Harrisburg, and even into Washington, D.C., so we can get the resources required to make the D&L a reality into Wilkes-Barre and through the Lehigh Valley. We need to make the funding, the D&L Trail a priority at all levels of government and in the private sector. And I think it's up to us to generate the enthusiasm for the city-changing asset that we're all building together. Many of us know it, and we can feel it. We can see what's happening. We can see the potential. And I think it's up to all of us to convince others to join us, to talk about it, and to share that enthusiasm. The way I see it, the next 4 or 5 years are going to be a hell of a ride. And we're thankful to have you all along with us as we look to connect the trail through these gaps. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Claire Sadler. Again, thanks for being here. It's good to be part of this project.
Thank you very much, Mike. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. I know we still have people logging in, so we'll have a few more joining us as we go, but we're really excited to be able to gather to talk about, to do another one of our interactive virtual town halls from the D&L. Just wanted to go over a few, what we'd like to call ground rules. We do ask that everybody stays muted unless you are the speaker. It will just help with the sound quality for everybody listening. We also encourage you to put questions, if you have them as we go, put questions into the chat box, please. We do have a D&L staff member monitoring that chat box. And if we're able to address project-specific questions when we're touching on that project, we will. Otherwise, we will have a long Q&A session at the end as well. So we encourage everyone to stay muted and share your questions with us so that we can make this more interactive and make sure we are covering what you would like to know about. Oh, sorry. Okay, so when folks hear about D&L and closing gaps, I think most of us think of physically connecting the continuous D&L trail, but to us, it's much more than that. We have a nationally significant story to tell but we have also been looking inward and realizing that that story also includes the injustices that have often been understated, and especially this year. And so we want to make sure to take a moment to draw some light to that. Things like Bethlehem Steel's discriminatory hiring practices, questionable business practices that took advantage of immigrant labor in the coal mines up in Luzerne and Carbon counties, the walking purchase that allowed the Penn family to take 1.2 million acres from the Lenape Nation. And so we at D&L have been making sure that actually over the last year and a half, having a lot more conversations around that. We want to acknowledge and pay closer attention to the opportunities we as an organization have to build an equitable space for socializing, exercising, enjoying nature, commuting to job or school, and learning about the history. We want to provide inclusive programming and think beyond the standard trail connections to how others might view the projects. And there are still many projects for closing these gaps, and we see this as an opportunity to make sure we're engaging the local communities, addressing the specific needs, whether it's in some areas might be a safe route to school in a city that doesn't provide school busing, or supporting new tourism and business opportunities in a small town or a rural area that's looking to diversify as they recover from the economic impacts of COVID. So as I said, for the last year and a half, D&L staff and board have been reflecting on our past, analyzing our present policies and implicit biases, and looking for ways to improve for the future. And we welcome any and all individuals and organizations to join us in that, to help make the D&L Trail itself, our programs, and our mission inclusive for all. Speakers for the town hall tonight are, as you got to hear from Mike Drabenstadt, D&L's board chair, myself. You'll also be hearing from Brian Green, D&L Director of Trails and Conservation and our data scientist, and Lauren Golden, D&L Trail and Stewardship Manager. Sadly, for only one more week, Lauren is moving to California shortly, so you will hear just how knowledgeable she is about all these projects, and I think you'll agree with us that it's a big loss for us, but if anyone knows of anyone, we do have the Trail and Stewardship Manager position posted right now on our website and are accepting applications, and very devoted to making sure we fill that position with someone that can pick up where Lauren left off and close these gaps. And then other speakers will include Rylan Coker from North Branch Land Trust and John Petrini from Luzerne County Planning. We'll be going through just an agenda for tonight, a snapshot of our D&L Trail progress, the regional impact we've seen from having one county, Carbon County, fully connected, the overview of the projects needed to add 19 more miles to of D&L Trail in Luzerne County, and those process and timelines for those projects to be completed. And then also, obviously, the most important part is how can others help, and how can we all work together for municipal leaders, residents, funders, and how we can pull together a larger team to get this done, and then have a Q&A session. Joining us this evening, we have a variety of organizations, and more coming in all afternoon. So we apologize if we are missing anyone on here, but everything from nonprofits to state agencies to legislative offices. And we very much thank all that are involved. I think that everyone can agree that we are attempting to build this trail to the benefit of all. And we do not see this as a D&L only project at all. We want to make sure we're working as a team. So as I mentioned, we have one of our 5 counties that has a fully connected D&L Trail route through it so far, and that is Carbon County. And that came with the completion of the Mansion House Bridge and then the Jim Thorpe retaining wall and trail project joining it in Jim Thorpe. So photos here from some of those different locations. Just wanted to point out that now with 59 continuous miles of trail from the Black Diamond to Northampton Canal Street Park. We really are looking at every gap we close in Luzerne County gets us one step further to Wilkes-Barre, but also on the other end with the gap in from Northampton to Allentown, connecting that 7 miles or 14-mile loop will allow us to have well over 100 miles connected, and that will be the driving factor for a lot of those overnight trips that many of us are looking to try and be able to encourage and bring that tourism to our small towns and businesses. The anthracite region, and especially near this completed section, has been seeing consistently seeing some of the highest trail counts on our trail counters. 16 of our trail-friendly businesses, the D&L certified trail-friendly businesses, are in the anthracite region, and that is 57% of all trail-friendly businesses, to give you it. And that's without having these 19 miles in Luzerne County. So we are very much hoping to see that number increase with every time we can close a trail gap together. The positive impact, we've seen so many positive impacts in Whitehaven, in Jim Thorpe, Lehighton, Weisport, and East Bend Township. And the overall message we have heard from the communities is that the D&L Trail is a key asset for them that improves quality of life for the residents and also helps to improve the economy and bring in visitors. The combination of a long connected trail and COVID-19 has shown that the D&L Trail is an essential place that provides many benefits. And now I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Trails and Conservation and Data Scientist, Brian Green.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to be here and join you in talking about Luzerne County and about one of our pillars, which is economic development. And I like to say that trails mean business. And here we're looking at some data from the Pennsylvania State Tourism Office that shows that in Luzerne County in 2018, travelers spent over $213 million on recreation, and that tourism supported over 7,200 jobs. And locally in Luzerne County, in Whitehaven, we have 3 trail-friendly businesses, Otters, Odds and Ends, the Victorian Connection, and Pocono Biking. And I think it's a good example to show the kind of breadth of businesses that can benefit from trails, from ones that you would traditionally think about, like a bike shop, renting bikes to people. My last communication with them this fall, they said that they were up 5% in bike rentals this year. So you would think a bike shop is what comes to mind, but there's also other places like the Victorian Connection, which is a lodging, or one of my favorite places in Whitehaven, Otters, Odds and Ends, a antique shop that's right on Main Street in Whitehaven. Pete and Amanda are these 2 amazing people that are locals. They saw all the thousands of people going by on the D&L Trail, and they thought, hey, here's an opportunity. Here is a way that we can share our passion for local history and unique artifacts, and also, help create some jobs and, take advantage of this opportunity. So, nationally, when we look at the numbers, Pennsylvania is the 5th highest state in the nation for the outdoor recreation spending, with over $29 billion. It's over $250,000 jobs in Pennsylvania and $1.9 billion in taxes. So the outdoor recreation economy and trails is something that brings a lot of benefits. And right now in Luzerne County, we're only seeing the greatest benefit in Whitehaven, because that is where the D&L Trail is most connected. And so we want to continue to bring the trail to other places, so that Mountaintop, Laurel Run, Oliver Mills, all the way down into Wilkes-Barre, that they can benefit from trails and have the D&L Trail. And what that really will start to do is once we get this long distance trail connected, we'll be able to have people coming and doing overnight visits coming from all across the country, from other countries even. And so, so we definitely believe that trails mean business. We can go to the next slide. And another one of our pillars is health and wellness. And this is another aspect that trails bring to communities, that they help make them healthier. This bar chart that you're seeing is from the Geisinger Community Health Survey and of the Wyoming Valley. And so only less than 20% of survey respondents said that I would describe my community as healthy. And with the top two reasons that the people cited was substance abuse and obesity. And so overall, Luzerne County ranks 63rd out of the 67 total counties in Pennsylvania. So it has one of the lowest health rankings. And for the D&L 5-county corridor, it is the lowest. 30% of the community are obese. 29% of residents in Luzerne County report no physical activity. And so these are real challenges. Now, trails aren't the only answer, but they are a cost-effective part of the solution. In communities that invest in trails, they provide the opportunities for free access for people to recreate, to stay healthy. There's lots of documented research that shows that people who exercise on trails outdoors have improved mental health, that they are less likely to be involved in substance abuse, and they are more likely to continue to exercise, even than people who do the same amount of exercise indoors. Our research from our own Get Your Tail on the Trail health initiative shows that people who exercise on the D&L Trail on average burn more calories and spend more time, because the D&L Trail is a long trail that allows them to go that extra mile, go a little bit further, see if they can go from, just walking to running to doing a 5K to doing a half marathon. So really the whole picture is that trails and communities that have trails are more, they have more walkable, they're more bikeable, and that creates healthier communities. So that is all that I have for these two slides, and we'll give it back to Claire to continue on.
Thank you, Brian. Had to remember to unmute myself there. Moving into the details of our trail projects, as you heard from our board chair, Mike Drabenstadt, that we talk about it as having 2 gaps left. Really a lot of projects, but focusing on the 2 large gaps, which are that Lehigh Valley gap and then the route to Wilkes-Barre to reach that northern terminus. And I do need to note, yes, there is 1 remaining project in Bucks County, and I think we've gotten to the point where we are so confident in the partners and the progress that PEC and DVRPC and others have made closing the final gap in Morrisville that we're anxious to check it off the list, which is why we don't necessarily refer to having that as one of the very large gaps still. So just wanted to note that this map we have shown here is showing our trail projects in the different phases that they go through in order to be completed, to reach completion. Go through the proposed, just conceptual phase, and often that original initial planning can be a 2 to 3 year time period itself. Then into, for ones that require it, acquisition, anything from 1 to 10 years that can take to figure out what route and then how to acquire into public ownership of some sort the land that is needed. Engineering and permitting is generally a 2 to 4 year phase. And then you get to the construction, which is the focal point that everybody keys in on. It is normally one of the shortest phases, 1 to 2 years. But the point is that all of these projects, as many of you are well aware, take a long time to queue up for that construction. And the more partners we have working together and the more ideas and support, the faster we can move these through to some extent. But generally, there is a timeline associated with each of those phases. And getting into the specific Luzerne County gap, you'll see here are what we call our Luzerne County gap map, showing 10 different projects that should help to add 19 more miles to the D&L Trail to get it to the northern terminus at the riverfront in Wilkes-Barre, River Commons. And this etching on the right side, you'll see from about 1878 is from F.H. Taylor's tourism book, sponsored by the Lehigh Valley Railroad. And you see an early Wyoming Division trail winds around the Wyoming Valley Overlook in Fairview on Penobscot Mountain. So Lauren had dug this one up just as an example of the great views and the history that this trail will relate to. And with that, I will pass it off to Lawrence to start heading through the different trail projects that are displayed on this map and hear from her and our partners on the details of where we're at and what is needed and what we're asking for support on.
Thank you, Claire. Before we delve too far into the details, I just want to take a moment and reiterate that although I'm speaking on behalf of all of these projects, each project has a different partnership structure, and the D&L doesn't actually own any of the trail. Each segment is owned by a different local landowner, and so we partner with them, and then additional agencies, consultants, and local stakeholders as needed to move the project through those 4 phases of development that Claire just detailed. So with that, we'll start with one that some of you may be familiar with. So clearly it's been in the construction phase for a little while, but progress has been a bit slow, and that's okay. This one just has a lot of details and a lot of things that have changed since construction has started. So in the next slide, we have a breakdown of really the remaining part to complete, if you've visited the site recently, is that track crossing itself. And so we've made good progress on improving the trail, this 400-foot long, roughly, section of trail. What's left to do is really some railroad associated work that all has to be approved by the railroad itself. So that's what we're working through. And we're hoping that construction will resume sometime soon, but we don't anticipate that it will finish before the project will have to be shut down for winter. So it will likely get finished in 2021 sometime. So as we move from south to north from the Middleburg Road segment, the next section that we've been examining is Johnson Street, which is a little side street off of 437, to connecting to the existing Black Diamond section, or Black Diamond northward to Johnson Street. This one is in the preliminary planning process, or the proposed phase on the project map that Claire reviewed. At the moment, we're wrapping up a study of this particular section. And that study revealed 4 potential routes and created some visual renderings for how the trail could look for some of the infrastructure pieces that we think might be needed. Here in the Glen Summit community, in order to avoid crossing the road at grade, we would potentially put a box culvert underneath the roadway. And that would keep all the different types of traffic grade separated and allow the trail users to continue on the trail essentially undisturbed. So once that study is wrapped up, and those additional 4 scenarios would need additional engineering, but that's where we're at with that one. Thank you, Claire. This one is a little farther along in the trail development process. So the Mountaintop to Oliver Mills segment is actually owned by the Anthracite Scenic Trails Association. And I think I saw Sean on the call here somewhere. So Sean, chime in if you need to, but thank you in general for being a great trail owner. So at the moment, we're in the engineering phase and we are working through the necessary permits, both environmental permits and then also with the local municipalities that this section runs through. So that's Fairview Township, Hanover Township, and Laurel Borough. Claire, if you could switch to the next slide. What we're doing is we've started to apply for construction funding for this section. Our current cost estimate is about 1.4 million. Now that sounds like a lot, but this section would construct approximately 5 miles of trail, and it would include a trailhead. And this section has not only this wonderful view, so this is the modern day view of that 1878 etching that Claire had showed earlier, but also a lot of the small waterways that flow off of the mountain that powered things like the Oliver's powder mills in Laurel Run traverse the former railroad bed in this section. And it makes an incredibly scenic section, but it also means that we have to make sure that all of that water continues to move away from the trail and down the mountain in the appropriate way. So we're not only excited about the trail development in this section, but also to get to share some of the really interesting and unique history that happened on this little stretch. Moving on from there, speaking of Oliver Mills, brings us northward to what I'll say is the most complicated trail project that we have in the whole Luzerne County gap. We're finishing up we've finished up what we think is a concept plan that could connect through this section. And that's where we're at the acquisition phase. So any connection that happens in this section, and you'll see, so from where we're standing is not actually on any of the trail segments. This is just the best shot that I could get of what's happening in this area. So the trail, as you move through this section, you would approach from the right side of the train tracks, and you would need to end up to continue on the trail on the left side of the train tracks on the other side of that bridge that you see up ahead. So we have both a railroad crossing, and it's a double track here, and it is a main line and the trains go very fast on a blind curve. And then you have to cross that elevated roadway that also has very fast traffic with blind curves. So this is a very tricky, difficult situation. So our concept plan shows that we think we could build a ramp that would ramp up to the elevation of the existing bridge, build a new bridge, and you can see the location in that photo there, across the train tracks that would lead to a switchback that would drop you back down to a culvert underneath the roadway. So you would cross above the train tracks and potentially below the roadway. That's the, it's a very complicated, but it's also, after much discussion with PennDOT and the railroad and the community, this would be likely the safest option, but admittedly a very expensive option and one that would be incredibly complicated to permit. So that's why I said this would be the most complicated of the projects we'll look at today. Moving on from there, we get back to a section that I'm happy to report is actually moving forward a little farther than the Oliver Mills crossing. North Branch Land Trust is our local trail owning partner in this section, and they own from that Oliver Mills crossing all the way around past the Seven Tubs Nature Area and then back to Laurel Run Borough again at what you may know as the Giants Despair parking lot area. So it is a route, a loop or a fish hook all the way around the mountain. In the next slide, you'll see some of the progress that I was mentioning. So that picture on the left was taken in 2017, and the picture on the right was taken just a couple weeks ago. So a contractor has mobilized. We do have, I'll say, most of the construction funding that we need to develop the half of the route that North Branch owns, phase 1 of construction. In the next slide, I break down the 2 phases that this section is being developed in. So on the south side of the mountain in those previous photos, it's approximately 3 miles of trail, and it runs from the Oliver Mills crossing to the 7 Tubs, roughly the 7 Tubs area, up about 200 feet in elevation above the 7 Tubs trailhead up on the mountain. And our partners are in need of some construction funding. So I'll say one of the grants that we have applied for got COVID, and we're a little bit short. And so we're hoping to wrap up that project by the end of the year if we can get additional funding. North Branch needs about $90,000 to finish off that project. The project total is just shy of about $1 million. So you could, we're super close, but we do need that last little bit of funding. And then the next section that North Branch owns, that phase 2 of construction, is still in the engineering and designing phase, working through some permitting. And that section on the north side of the mountain is very different from what was on the south side of the mountain. The railroad bed was very intact on the south side of the mountain. And on the north side in the 60s, there was some activity to remove an active mine fire. And so that really changed the landscape on that north side of the mountain. And so that's why it's still, it's being constructed separately from the south side. And we do not yet have any construction funding for that section. So we're hoping that we can figure out a plan to fund that sooner rather than later, and connect and open up all 6 miles around the Wilkes-Barre Mountain. So from there, we move into projects or project segments that are very much back in that concept planning phase, similar to the sections south of Mountaintop around the Black Diamond Trailhead that I had mentioned. And these next segments that we're going to talk about really start the partnership between the D&L and the Luzerne County Planning Office over the last few years. So a number of years ago, I had the good fortune of attending a full-day van trip with a number of stakeholders and county planning staff. And we started at the Giants Despair parking lot, and we drove as many different potential trail connection routes as everyone in the group could possibly think of. And we kept coming up against 2 hurdles, 2 factors that would make or break a potential trail connection to go from the Giants Despair parking lot to the River Commons. The first one was the grade. In order for a trail to be truly multi-use, it has to meet the Americans with Disabilities Act standards. And so it can't be very steep. And so coming straight down Northampton Street, for example, eliminated that. And then the other factor was we need to be able to cross both I-81 and Route 309 safely, and preferably not at grade. So not directly interacting with traffic in any way. And so during that car ride, what one of the former county planning staff took us to, in the next slide, I have a number of pictures, are 4 existing bridges that carry both 81 and 309 over the former railroad bed. So you can see here, there are 4 of them, and they're all in great shape. And I am happy to report that PennDOT was considering filling these in because bridges take maintenance. And the Luzerne County Planning Office emailed me, and collectively we waved a little white flag and said, please don't fill those in. We really need those. And so they've altered their plans, and they're going to maintain the bridges. And so that will allow the trail to cross 81 and 309 safely, not at grade, and also, continue to follow the historic railroad route. So that's a big one. And with that, is John Petrini? John, are you around?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, John. So John joins us from the Luzerne County Planning Office, and they have been very, very busy lately. So since that preliminary car ride a few years ago, they've embarked on a number of plans that will play a big factor in determining whether or not the route I've identified here on the map is going to be feasible or not. So if John, if it's okay, I'll pass it off to you and you can talk about the county's ongoing plans and how the D&L fits into those.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everybody. Like Lauren said, my name is John Petrini. I'm with Luzerne County's Planning Office, and I'm also a member of the Lackawanna Luzerne Metropolitan Planning Organization. And we've been a great partner with D&L, and we've always shown our support in closing the gap of the D&L to try to get into the downtown of Wilkes-Barre. Closing this gap is found on our we're currently developing our long-range transportation plan with Michael Baker. It is found on that document, and it's also one of the deliverables of our current bicycle and pedestrian plan that Barry Isett is currently wrapping up for us. Obviously, we have some obstacles to try to get into downtown Wilkes-Barre, and I believe that's what this town hall is for, to try to come up with funding and ideas and ways to generate partnerships and try to get the D&L into downtown Wilkes-Barre. I believe we were in talks with our Department of Economic Development and trying to find different routes along that corridor into Pennsylvania Avenue. And we're just here to show our support, and whatever the D&L needs, we're here to help in any way.
Thanks, John. So as just to reiterate, there are 2 plans that are ongoing, in addition to that one plan that John had just mentioned that is wrapping up. So the plan that's wrapping up is a downtown Scranton and Wilkes-Barre, but we'll just talk about the relevant Wilkes-Barre portion. Downtown Wilkes-Barre bicycle and pedestrian study. And this really looks at the downtown core and opportunities to connect through the downtown for bicycles and pedestrians, and which roads are better for a cycle track, and which roads do we want bicyclists to stay away from, and there's a lot of detail associated with that. But one of the opportunities that was brought up in those ongoing conversations was that the Luzerne County Transportation Authority is starting to construct, and I think they've started, John, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think they started demolition on the existing Murray building very recently.
If you drive by it, it is completely gone.
Is it? That's progress. So one of the route that we've identified would take the D&L Trail directly past this upcoming Murray Complex intermodal station. So anyone using the D&L Trail could either get to the trail via the local transportation system or use the trail to get to that local transportation system. So that's, we don't have an identified route, but we do have these local landmarks that we want to try to connect so that the D&L can be as big a transportation asset as possible. One of the other ongoing plans that I mentioned is it's a joint plan. So I'm going to get really nerdy here for a second, but just go with me. So the county is updating the long-range transportation plan that PennDOT uses to allocate which funds go to which project and identify the transportation infrastructure needs, at the same time that they're updating the comprehensive land use plan. That's where the county makes recommendations for which open space to preserve, or where to put new infill apartment buildings, or what would be the best location for new logistics warehouses, for example. And one of the components of both of those plans is trails. Trails as part of the comprehensive land use in terms of recreation, and then also part of the long-range transportation plan for reasons like I've identified here with the Murray Complex. So we're hoping that the D&L, and I think we touched on this at the beginning, can really be a really diverse asset for downtown Wilkes-Barre. So not only connecting local downtown residents to the nearby recreation areas, 7 Tubs, or maybe even all the way to Lehigh Gorge State Park without needing a car. But also to get them to work, honestly, or anywhere they might want to go. On the next slide, we just zoomed in again to these projects that are closer to downtown, and I think Senator John Udicek sort of summed up how we all felt when he finished his traversing the entire D&L Trail after the Eagles won the Super Bowl in 2018. He's there hugging our trail blade at River Commons. And so with that, I'm going to pass it back to Claire. That's all of our trail projects.
Thank you, Lauren. And thank you, John. And I did want to note that I know we now have Rylan Coker as able to join us from North Branch Land Trust. So I do encourage people for any of these projects to be putting questions into the chat box. We will be at questions in just a minute. So we would be happy to have more conversation around those projects, but we wanted to note again that we don't by any means think that we as D&L are in this alone. We have the key partners that you've heard from tonight and other key partners, especially the landowners of these sections of trail, since we do not own any of the D&L Trail. And they have been engaged. We have new partners coming on board sometimes, but we're realizing that we don't have a big enough team. And we want to make sure that we are incorporating any others. So we are inviting you all, there's roles for everybody to have an active role in how to help get the D&L Trail completed and connected through Luzerne County, adding these other 19 miles. And especially in these coming years, the areas that we can get built in the next few years, we want to be able to help with the economic development impacts and recovery, quite honestly, from we're seeing, as you heard tonight from the data and many of us talking about it, the heavily increased trail usage during this year with the pandemic, and people hitting the trail because it's a place they can socially distance. It's a place that they can clear their head of the stress that we're all dealing with. It's a place they can exercise if the gym was closed, or they're used to working out at work or something, depending on where. But so this is a long-term process. We are not believing that we are going to have these 19 miles done in the next few years, but we are going to chip away at it with your help. And we are definitely at a place where we're determined and committed to engage the communities, engage community leaders as well, figure out what is needed so that as the sections, especially the sections that are still going through the planning or the engineering phases, can make sure that we're not overlooking something. And we are taking advantage of all opportunities and ways that this will help the communities and help the visitors as well. So we have active support, ongoing active support from DCNR and other funders. We're always looking for additional funding opportunities. And I just want to note, you've probably heard us mention it a few times, that there are some grant funding and others that often require a municipal sponsor to apply on behalf of the project. And so there are a lot of times specific to the opportunity that North Branch Land Trust is leading and D&L is supporting, where we can apply for more funding sources or probably have some more opportunities if we are able to partner in that way with some of the local municipalities. So we ask that anyone in the roles they play, if you are able to lend that type of support, but also if you are a trail user or a resident, voicing the importance of the trail to your communities, to funding sources, to legislators. I know we have full support of many of our legislators, and we are blessed in that way. But it's always helpful to increase the voices there. So with that, we'll go to questions. We'll cover questions. We also then will wrap up with anything else that those on the call can be doing to help us spread the word. And I'm sure there's, I don't know, I always have a lot of questions for Lauren when she runs through these projects. So I'm sure there's going to be more, but I'm going to pass this off to Kelly to moderate. I see some questions starting to come in. And I hope that people will stay with us to hear what others are wondering about, but also until we wrap up, we're actually ahead of the schedule that we proposed. I know it's the end of the day for some though. So Kelly, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Claire. Thank you again for everyone for joining us this afternoon. We have some questions submitted in the chat box. If you do have a question, just put it in the chat box over there and we'll get to as many as possible and make sure to follow up with those that we cannot get to during this time. So our first question comes from Richard. Could the proposed location of the trail from Ashley to the River Commons be shown again? Is there any other details that we can share about that?
I can answer that one. So I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves and share a lot of details related to that. But I will say when the Luzerne and Lackawanna Downtown Bike Ped Study is released, the details of this connection will be part of that plan. So I would say stay tuned for the release of that plan and you'll be able to check out exactly where this proposes to go and which segments will be a little easier and which segments will be a little more difficult.
Thank you, Lauren. I have a question about some of the health impacts. Brian, if you want to talk a little bit about this. I know you live very close to our data about where people live in relationship to the trail. So the question is, which trail section has the largest impact on giving access to the most people who live near the trail? Which section would reach the people that have the most health issues?
Yeah, in this section right here that we're talking about in the anthracite region, the real key gap that we need to fill in to reach those health goals and to reach those accessibility goals is in downtown Wilkes-Barre. You know, being able to provide a place where the most people live is critically important. And I can say when we look at the entire D&L Trail, as all of our current trailheads and future trailheads, I think it's like 64 different ones. We do data analysis on the communities, and 3 of our poorest communities are right in the Wilkes-Barre area. And so, you know, building the trail there is critically important for addressing equality issues and being able to, you know, make sure that trails are equitable for all of our people. So, you know, there's a big push for us trying to get trails into Wilkes-Barre.
Claire, is there anything you would like to add?
Nope, I'm good on that one. Did you have some questions that came in prior to with registrations, Kelly?
Yes, I do have a question from Diana from Facebook. She'd like to know, and I believe, Lauren, this is a question for you. What are the plans to improve the trail service between Whitehaven at G&A Hardware to the Black Diamond Trailhead in Middleburg?
Sure. So that that section between downtown Whitehaven, or we call it the Whitehaven North parking lot, and Middleburg Road is part of a state park improvement project. I believe the state park has plans to do that section when they also open a, Brian, is it a visitor center or the one that'll be just south of Whitehaven?
Lehigh Gorge State Park is going to do a new entrance to the state park that will be at an improvement of the Whitehaven South Trailhead and also Lehigh River access point.
Correct. So when that project goes out for bid, a component of the project, but not physically connected to that Whitehaven South section, is this Whitehaven North section.
Is there any, if there's any other questions? I think we've gone through the questions that we've had. I believe the next one is Claire to talk about next steps. Ooh, I do have a question from, oh, we can do that, Richard, absolutely. About a provide a list of, we were talking a little bit about budget and funding. I know that Lauren and I have talked about this as the D&L's fundraiser. We talk about what is needed from a financial standpoint to really make this happen. And Lauren, Claire, can you guys talk a little bit about how we fund something that's so critical and so many moving pieces?
Sure, Lauren, why don't you take that one first, and then I'll build off of it into this.
Sure. So I think the old adage of how do you eat an elephant it applies here, one bite at a time. Really it's by breaking it down. So the project phases that we discussed, and then breaking the trail length, those 19 miles, into viable pieces, and then breaking those pieces into the necessary phases. And this is the funding matrix that Mike, our board chair, had mentioned at the beginning. Each one of those phases gets funded through a different set of grants to move it to the next stage. And then different grants are available for different phases of development. So Kelly and I have a whole matrix of which funding is available for which piece of a project and when can we apply, and the sequencing of all that is a whole thing. But really that's how we do it, is one step at a time.
And to piggyback on that, we realized that, yes, we can work off of grant cycles and that public funding and the different timelines and criteria for them, but there do come times where we are obviously focusing on how do we bring in the private funding sources, or how do we have corporate donors, and there are always opportunities for an organization to say, here, if you meet this in donations and provide us a matching gift, or provide one of the project sponsors a matching gift that we can then rally the communities around and try to bring in the funding. And that has happened on occasion in the past. We also, as you see here, one of the ways that we can have some, depending on what role you play in the communities, but we are looking for more, as we said, project sponsors, because we have found great success in other trail gap areas with being able to provide the D&L staff support to help apply for and manage a grant on behalf of a municipal entity to help with the work that goes into that. But there are sources that we ourselves as nonprofits that, that North Branch, like I said, or that D&L or others are not able to apply for. And so looking for that opportunity to partner and have project sponsors. Moving from the funding question, though, into just other ways to take action to help us close the gap and to benefit the communities. We will be sending out a post-event survey. We always like to get feedback. We appreciate so much the feedback that we get on these types of events, because not only because we're trying to figure out how during COVID do we continue to engage and get the word out, but also just in general, what else needs to be shared? What are we not touching on in enough detail? So I do hope that all of you will take that post-event survey to give us more feedback on that. Obviously, at all times, opportunities for donating time, talent, treasure, trail patrol opportunities for those. And I think we have a couple of trail patrollers on this call, if I saw on the list before, folks that I think trail patrol is probably one of our volunteer opportunities that was easiest to continue during COVID, because our trail patrollers are key in when they are out on the trail, they are watching for any maintenance issues they saw and reporting things back so that we can work with landowners to support them. They are passing out maps if they run into someone that needs one, or answering trail questions. But generally it is being an extra set of eyes and ears for the D&L and spreading the word when they're out on the trail already enjoying it. So always opportunities for time, talent, treasure as far as memberships, donations to us or to other partners that are helping to get the trail built. And then voices. We need more voices. We always need more voices. So letting those community leaders know the importance of the impacts that the trail can have in Luzerne County. We hear John, and we're so thrilled that the county has incorporated the D&L Trail route into their plans and trying to figure out, really how we do take one bite at a time in getting us to Wilkes-Barre. Introducing your friends and neighbors to sections of the trail that are existing already so that they're more comfortable on them, more aware of them, and can tell others. We always hear from folks saying, oh yeah, I found this section of trail near my house, and then making sure that they're seeing signage and they're understanding the connectivity of the D&L Trail from Wilkes-Barre to Bristol. And then sharing your trail experiences. Miranda hasn't had a chance to speak on here because she's running our Facebook Live, but our community engagement manager does a fantastic job of watching what others are posting with their experiences on the D&L Trail, and when allowed, sharing them with the rest of our community. And we encourage more people to be doing that so that everyone can see the breadth of experiences, the different historic sites, the different character of the communities. There is no one size fits all when it comes to building the D&L Trail, and we want to make sure that we're catering to the needs of each community. So we hope that there is something on this list for everyone to get involved in, to take action on, and really support the group, the team, join the team so that we can get the trail built up to Wilkes-Barre. And I do see, if we don't have any other questions, just wanted to check on that, Kelly. I don't see any others. I do see that Mike Drabenstadt is back with us here. So I will, if he would like, give him the opportunity to wrap this up. But I thank all of you from board members. We know there's many of you on here and have been supporting us endlessly, especially this year. And partners and trail users, members, we thank all of you for joining us, and we hope this has been a useful opportunity for you.
And Claire, I was here for the duration. I just wanted to take my my face off so you didn't have to look at it at all. But just to maybe build on something Lauren said, how do we do it, one bite at a time? I'm actually going to correct her. We're doing this a bunch of bites at a time. And the bites that we're doing up in Wilkes-Barre and up into Wilkes-Barre, we're also doing in the Lehigh Valley. So when Claire says, when Lauren says we're looking for grants, a lot of that grant money is for engineering, is for concept development, is for construction. We still need to fund people like Lauren, and she's just one person. Ideally we have two people helping to coordinate all this. We have to fund people like Miranda, who can help share the stories about what's going on, and the team to organize all this, and people like Brian, who can, and the team to get volunteers out there for trail cleanups and the patrol and things like that. So, we see everything, as we say, a three-legged stool. We have, public support, and we have a lot of foundation support, but it's that private support that is that very important, third leg of the stool that allows us to support all the municipalities and work on a partnership basis. So, we appreciate the support and your time to be on here and to help move this forward. There's only one way we can do it, and that's together. And we want to get this done as soon as possible. Like I said at the beginning, there are a lot of people counting on this. There are a lot of people who want this to happen. And as soon as we put it in, there's going to be 10 times that number of people who are happy that it's there. And the sooner we can do this, the happier those people become, the healthier they become, and the richer we can make the area as well. So there's a lot in this for everyone. And we're thankful for everyone being part of this today and being part of this endeavor that we're undertaking. So thank you very much.